My name is Clement Lawrence, and I'm the Sales and Marketing Manager for Wilderness Safaris in Namibia. And we'd like to welcome everybody to the show. Everybody's kind of spirited, and hope you're really excited about it. We're going to explore Namibia and give you guys a good breakdown of what Wilderness Safaris is all about, the significant areas where we're located, and obviously just sharing some useful information about some of the uniqueness in each and every area. This is going to be awesome. With Safaris, we find ourselves very proud to work with great organizations as well as NGOs and conservation efforts in regards to the areas we operate. With that said, we are really fortunate today to be joined by both Emsie Verwey, who does hyena, brown hyena research in the Skeleton Coast National Park, as well as Dr. Flip Stander, who also does a lot of the work on the desert lands up in the northwest of Namibia. They will both take the opportunity now to hopefully share their screen successfully and maybe just give you guys a bit of an insight of the areas we operate and the efforts they do. And then obviously as we go through the rest of the presentation, my presentation will touch base on what they're doing and how it's significant to our guests. So I will politely hand over to Emsie. And Emsie, welcome. Thanks for having and joining us. She'll jump over right now and share her screen and get straight to it.
Okay, well, thank you very much from myself here, Philip Stander and Emsie. So we'll try and get our screen going and hopefully it works.
Okay, so yeah, welcome everyone. Yeah, Philip and I are talking to you from Swakopmund, and thank you for taking the time to join us.
Can we just maybe find out if people can see our screen, maybe from Clement or any of the other organizers? Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can. Thank you very much.
All right, okay. So there we can go.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm based at the Hoanib camp, and I'm a research coordinator. And from here, I assist and liaise with various research and conservation efforts. We also work closely with NGOs in the areas and also our local community partners. And as Clement said, I do research on the brown hyenas in the Skeleton Coast Park. So we know very little about brown hyenas. There's also been very little research done on brown hyenas, and especially in our area in the northwest of Namibia, where I'm based, there's virtually no information on the brown hyenas in that area. So people know very little about brown hyenas, and the face of the hyenas are the spotteds, which is unfortunate because the spotteds are so unique and so different from the brown hyenas. Although they belong to the same family, the Hyenidae family, we've got spotted hyenas, we've got brown hyenas, we've got striped hyenas, and the aardwolf in the Hyenidae family. So the brown hyenas are solitary scavengers, and they're not the efficient hunters that the spotteds are. So these guys are mainly scavengers. They're opportunistic killers. So if the opportunity presents itself for an easy kill, they'll do that. But as a rule, these guys don't hunt. They don't stalk. They don't give chase over at high speeds or over long distances. So these guys are solitary scavengers. They're nocturnal. They're very secretive. So part of the issue is that we don't see them. So they're not doing themselves any favors by operating under the cover of darkness. So they've got a very complex social system that we know very little about. These guys are closer related to cats than to dogs. So they're very unique, and they've been reclassified a few times over the years because they're just so unique. We still don't completely understand where they originated from. So they have a varied diet, and they most of their diet consists of mammal remains, insects, birds, as well as fruit to supplement their moisture requirements. And they walk an average of 30 kilometers a night to find food. And during the day, they're not very active, so you won't see them. Cubs are raised at communal dens. All the adults in the clans bring food to the dens, and they look after these cubs. So the cubs grow up in these dens for 12 to 15 months, and at the end of this time, start leaving the dens for short periods of times and short distances until eventually they're on their own out there. Yeah, so there's not a lot of teaching from the older animals, because they scavengers, so they don't need to learn to hunt. And these guys become adults at about 30 months old, and then they're ready to breathe. And most clans consist of related females, immigrant males, and every now and then nomadic males that join clans when females are in need. So I look at 3 clans in the area around the Hoanib camp. There's one clan in the Hoanib River. This is the habitat of that clan. So very different habitats for these 3 clans. So there's one clan in the Hoanib River, one clan in the Hoanib floodplain, and then one clan at the coast, on the Skeleton Coast at Mover Bay. So very different habitats for these clans. This is a female from the Hoanib clan carrying a oryx vertebrate that she scored that morning from a lion kill. And this vertebra she carried over 20 kilometers back to the den to feed the cubs. So these guys are very dedicated providers. They're very smart. They've outwitted me many times. I've got great respect for them. And this is the floodplain habitat. This is Rudy. He's one of the oldest males in this study. He's been in the area since 2011. And I'm very fortunate to see him about once or twice a year. The floodplain is a difficult area to do observations in. As you can see, it's very densely vegetated. So I don't see these guys very often, and I rely a lot on the collar data to see what they get up to. So clans, on average, the Hoanib clan and the Hoanib clan and the floodplain clan, they've got about 6 to 8 members in a clan. So clans are not very big. And then the Skeleton Coast clan has about 8 to 10 members in their clan. So as you can see from the pictures, very different habitats, and 3 clans that I very intensely research in this area. And so a little bit of the basic of the research. So hyenas are collared in the top left. They get collared, and when we dart them to collar them, we collect biological data. They get measured, they get weighed. We take blood samples, hair samples. We take pasting, and then they wear these collars, and the collars collect GPS positions. You can set the collars to different timelines. So the top middle is what the data from the collars look like, and this data is very valuable. It gives us insight into their lives that we're not able to get otherwise. Then the top right is the data analyzed, and we work out the home ranges from these collars. So the blue is an adult male in the Hoanib clan with a home range of 2,000 square kilometers. The green is an adult female in the Hoanib clan with 1,200 square kilometers. And then the red is an adult female at the Mover Bay clan with a home range of 500 square kilometers. So from this data, you can see that there's different home range sizes between for males and females, and then also between clans. And this is because of the habitat and the way the food is distributed. We also use camera traps extensively. We've got a whole network of camera traps between the Desert Lime project and the Hyaena project. We've got cameras which covers most of basically the Palembang concession and beyond. So these are also very valuable. We don't see all these. We don't see all the collared or non-collared animals all the time. So we use the camera traps to monitor movements and activity from everyone using the routes. So the hyenas you can identify by the stripes on their legs. It's unique to every hyena, and it's quite a feat to try and identify them from from the camera traps. So these guys have unique patterns on their legs that you can ID them with, and related animals tend to have the same type of stripe arrangement. So there's definite correlation between related members. You can see, you can find the pattern in the legs. We also do visual observations. These are quite valuable. The collars tell you where they go and how far they've walked and at what time, but they don't tell you really what they were doing. So hyena permitting, you can follow some of the hyenas. Some of them are quite skittish. Some of them are very accommodating, and you can follow them. And I've learned a lot from following the hyenas, latrines that they visit, resting sites that they go to, and routes that they follow. And then bottom right is a picture of a scent mark. So brown hyenas communicate by scent. They don't have the long distance vocalizations that the spotteds have. Scent is the main way of communication. So the white paste, the white blob you see there is a pasting, and then on top there's a small black pasting. So these guys have two types of pastes, and this is what they use to communicate. The black pasting will tell you when the previous hyena has been in the area. So when you come past these pastings, you can see how long ago this area has been covered, and you can decide that you're going to spend time in this area or you're going to continue, because the likelihood of food will be very little if the black pasting says there's been a guy there that morning. And then the white pasting will tell you who the hyena was that was in the area. So the white pasting is basically the ID paste, and we collect these pastings, and it's a great non-invasive way to do DNA and genetics on these hyenas, because it's unique to individuals. And yeah, it's like a smelly fingerprint. So I just wanted to show you what the cubs look like. We very rarely see pictures of cubs or cubs because they are at the den. They don't leave the dens until they're much older, and then they don't look like this anymore. So this is the Hoanib litter. I do quite a lot of observations at the dens, doing the litter frequencies and sizes, and what happens to these hyenas when they leave the dens. So these are 3 hyenas at the Hoanib den, and at 6 weeks old on the left, and then the same 3 at 6 months old. So you can see there's a lot of social at the den. Carl is going to put on a small video clip of 2 of these young ones at the den playing with a piece of skin. So you can see they're very busy, they're very active, and there's a lot going on at these dens that we don't have the privilege to see all the time. Carl, over to you. Yeah, so you can see a little bit of play at the den, and this goes on all the time. So even so, when the female comes and she suckles them, she doesn't stay long, because these guys are very active, and they can become quite a nuisance eventually.
Emsie, thank you so much. That
Yes.
was absolutely amazing.
I'm still busy, Clement.
That's so cool, man. Thank you. Oh, yeah.
Okay, do you want to continue?
Yeah, Carl's going to play a little video, and then Dr. Flip will have a chance to go next.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
So is it,
Dr.
do
Flip,
I carry on? Yes.
you're welcome to introduce yourself, Dr. Flip. The ball is in your court. Please enjoy.
All right. Right. Thank you. Right. I'm just going to kick off with a bit of background about the desert lions. This is a study that's been going on for over 20 years. And I'd like to focus a little bit about some of the recent developments, especially lions that have started frequenting the coastal habitat, which is really quite unique, and to relate that to the tourism side and the value of the collaborations between sort of traditional wildlife research, conservation, and the whole tourism development. Now, Namibia is really unique. It's the only place in the world where lions that home ranges extend all the way to the coast, and that they have recently actually started utilizing the coastal habitat and the intertidal zones and feeding on marine food resources. So I'll elaborate a little bit on that. But just to go back to the basics, a project like a desert lion conservation can by no means have any success in terms of conserving these species in the long term. So it really relies on a collaborative effort. In Namibia, the Ministry of Environment is the responsible party for wildlife, but we're all partners in that process. So Desert Lion, perhaps, collecting all the doing the research, collecting the data, but it is only one part of this puzzle. And we have a very strong link with the tourism sector, it's particularly wilderness safaris over the years, but then many other tour operators in the area. And what has been really fantastic of late is that people have joined in forces, and they established the Lionscape Coalition, which Wilderness is part of, and that links to the Lion Recovery Fund from the US that provides a huge amount of funding and support for the work we do, and we all contribute to a sort of a global effort and a global approach. So I'm hoping that a lot of what I've mentioned here will come through in the rest of the talk. So I'd like to just elaborate a bit about the coastal lions. Now, lions living on the coast has been a thing of the Skeleton Coast area for many years. In the 70s and in the 80s, images of lions on the beach, such as the one on the right, that was a National Geographic article by Des and Jen Bartlett's famous filmmakers, were the first people to show lions on the beach, stimulated artists to draw paintings like the one of this male walking past the Ventura bomber, just images that grip people everywhere. And at that time, we started doing research. I was a young ranger at that time, and we fitted a few collars, but the lions did not survive because the area was really utilized by livestock farmers. There was no tourism in the area, even though we know from the 30s that lions occurred throughout Namibia and in that area of the Skeleton Coast. But livestock farming, people living in a really difficult habitat, trying to make a living with a few head of livestock. So the conflict between the people and lions were tremendous, and as a result, lions were eliminated. They were killed, in protection of livestock. And by the late 80s, all those lions had essentially gone. And we thought that the desert adapted lions had gone extinct. We knew so little about their movements, where they went and what their home ranges. And so it was almost impossible for us to try and conserve them. But they didn't all, they weren't all killed. A small pocket of them survived in a very mountainous area south of Sesfontein, the red sort of blob in the map on the right. And that's sort of when we started doing extensive research. And I was basically full-time working on the lions, and we were very fortunate to be able to document the growth of that little population. That coincided with the development of tourism, with Namibia becoming independent. Local communities were given rights to wildlife. Conservancies were formed. We had a number of years of really good rainfall, and all of that culminated into a favorable situation. And after about 5 years, things started really increasing, and 15 years later, we had 5 prides that had home ranges that extended all the way to the coast, and things were really looking favorable. But none of these lions actually utilized the marine resources, through that time, because they'd lost their knowledge. All the lions that knew about the marine food resources, such as the Cape fur seals and cormorants that we've only recently discovered is a major food source, they knew nothing of that. And it took another 5 years essentially. So 20 years later, early part of 2017, did the lions for the first time start utilizing the marine resources, and that developed into a major sort of attraction, which at this point we're really hoping to stimulate and bring tourism into the picture as well. Now they play, all of these carnivores that live in the coastal area play an important role, because termed maritime carnivores, they utilize food resources from 2 completely different trophic zones. And that results in the flow of energy between these, zones, the marine habitat and the terrestrial habitat. And that's incredibly important to the global food networks. And we hope, through all the conservation efforts and the tourism to try and stimulate that and preserve these really unique systems within our areas. The discovery of them feeding on cormorants was really quite amazing. That a very rich food resource, and they literally kill them by the hundreds along the coast. So what I'd like to show you now is just a bit of a detailed study that I did 2 years ago, when the lions essentially started utilizing the coast in the Hoanib River. I spent just over 60 days, 24-hour periods, observing these lions, documenting every single kill and every food item that they ate. And it was quite incredible. If you just look at the number of animals that they killed and then the biomass contribution, it turns out that 80% of their food items, and a bit more than that, 86% of the biomass consumed was essentially from a marine diet. Only a couple of terrestrial animals in that. So that has become essentially a regular event that we really need to protect these animals and prevent that knowledge from being lost again, and thinking about ways of benefiting that through tourism and other conservation means. With this graph, I'm just showing you the home ranges of the bigger part of the study. Like I've at the moment 38 lions with radio collars, satellite and GPS collars, and that's just looking at like the last 18 months of data. And you see the same animals are moving far inland, but then also a number of them visiting the coastline, which is really encouraging. So that's the location of the Hoanib camp, just to give you a bit of perspective. And now looking at the sort of 4 major prides that utilize the coastal zone. If we look at their home ranges, it extends, most of them over 5 up to 8,000 square kilometers, way to the east into the areas occupied by people. So the human-wildlife conflict element always comes into play. And what's really interesting is that in the last 18 months, every single one of those prides was involved in a human-wildlife conflict incidents, indicated by those skulls and crossbows. But now, subsequently, they started utilizing the coastal zone, which could, in a way, supplement the need for them to move inland. And if we can play our cards right, we can really reduce the conflict inland by them utilizing the coastal zone. Now, the coastal zone, unfortunately, is at the moment used for a different type of tourism, which is fishing. And fishermen and sort of wildlife conservation don't really go together. So it's up to us to try and find ways to develop tourism more efficiently, friendly ecotourism along the coastal area. And as I said, the tourism potential of that is enormous. Now, to end the talk with the tourism side. You know, I really believe it's a key element of conservation. We've demonstrated that through our work and our collaboration with Wilderness Safaris and a number of other operators. Now, up until, you know, our recent global disaster, it was the fastest growing industry in Namibia, and the potential was enormous. I was thinking of the fact that tourism can play such an important role in ecological monitoring. I'll elaborate on that a little bit more. From a conservation research point of view, it's incredibly important because that's where the majority of our funding and support comes from. And on top of that, it gives value to wildlife. Without tourism, I couldn't begin to try and conserve lions that prey on people's domestic livestock and that most people are afraid of. So tourism is really the thing that elevates us into interest, you know, long-term conservation. But we need to do responsible tourism, which isn't a given, you know, normally. And I'd like to, you know, use the camp at Wilderness Camp at Hoanib as an example, because you know, just look at the setting; it blends into the environment so well. The approach has been really good by establishing a research center, like where Emsie is based, working with different researchers and exposing tourists to the whole sort of approach. And then on top of that, really trying to develop these tours and even every game drive that goes out to collect valuable data in a systematic way that we can then basically develop a wildlife monitoring system that will be second to none. It can feed into the sort of national database and really put us all in a fantastic position as to the conservation. But then on top of that, looking at the area, you know, how we use the roads and off-road driving, and really sort of do a responsible effort. And a lot of that has worked very well, and I hope that in future we can continue with all of that. So thank you from my side.
Dr. Flip, thank you so much for such an insight in terms of everything that you guys contribute. As myself, I've been with Wilderness Safaris as well as Gerhard, who's sitting there next to me, for well over 10 years. And whether we've had a chance to work in the camps or pass through by the area or something like that, we've always had a chance to at least help out and in kind support you. And I remember also taking off parts of your car to help ours. So for whatever it's worth, it's always nice to know that you're around and our efforts that we carry on. So Carl has taken the opportunity, guys, to take my presentation and put it up on the screen, and then I'll try to talk my way through it and just expose you guys a bit more in terms of Wilderness Safaris in Namibia, where we're located, the geology around it, and its significance. I mean, for a lot of us who have a chance to speak about Namibia, we sometimes don't really express enough the space and freedom and quality that is available in Namibia. And hopefully today we try to get that message across to you guys in terms of where we are. So as we move along to the next slide, we just want to try to really, guys, it's very, very important. We recognize that Namibia, in terms of its location, there must be a significance of why we have camps located in certain areas, all right? An emphasis on the western side of the country is so important because it is the actual part called the Namib Desert, all right? So the Namib Desert spreads right across from the top to the bottom, all right? So from the top right to the bottom, it's about 1,500 kilometers of the Namib Desert. Namibia makes up most of it. You find some in Angola. You also find some of the desert in the northern parts of South Africa as well, all right? So our camp's located. We'll focus on the center of the screen. You see Kulala Desert Lodge and Little Kulala. All right, these guys is really, really important in terms of where these camps are located, as the highlight of that area is the Sossusvlei area, all right? Sossusvlei is actually from a Khoikhoi Kovap, or the Click language, and the Sossus means a place where water gathers, and Vlei is an interpretation of a pan or an open space. So a pan or open space where water gathers. So in the old times, people used to follow the water to the pan, and that's where they collected water. Hence the name Sossusvlei. All right. If we move, excuse me, if we look at around the central side on the coast, Walfish Bay, Swakopmund, As you can see, they are on the map. And for many of our guests that travel through the country, and we just hope that once this all blows over, our guests will have a chance to come back. When your guests come to Namibia, they are very likely to pass through Swakopmund and Wildfish Bay. Both these towns have a significant history value, and obviously being part of the transit, you might stop there and visit the lagoon and see some flamingos, or enjoy the amazing seafood, because I must admit the oysters are really, really delicious, or just go on a boat trip and experience a bit of the ocean style, all right? As I said, at the transit point, there is also an airstrip, as well as vehicles pass through there. You'll make your way to the northwest of the country, where you can see our camps are kind of cluttered together. The ones we really signify ourselves with a lot is the Marland camp and Doranawas, with the relevance that we have a great relationship with the local communities, right? These camps are actually located in conservancy areas. And so, this is a significant step forward for all of us who work in the tourism industry. I mean, Dr. Flip spoke about this coexistence of conservation and tourism building up. The same emphasis is focused on conservancy. So when a conservancy is in a specific area that is designated by the government to have a body of local community members manage the natural resources of the area, in return promote tourism, because they limit the areas in terms of where the grazing is, and also have rules in play in terms of when hunting is applicable and not. And as a result of that, camps can be found in places where both livestock, community, as well as wildlife coexist. And obviously there's a lot of challenges that goes with it. But I mean, we've been doing this since the early 2000s, and it's really, really proven value and success that by having camps located within conservancies and having communities part of our joint venture, it proves a great success. Then two camps that I find significant in its value as a unique experience: Desert Rhino Camp, which is just in the middle there, and Hoanib Skeleton Coast, which is just north of that, all right? These two camps specifically, guys, are located in a big concession area, all right? So it's a big concession area of about 5,500 square kilometers. That's like 500,000 hectares, 1 million acres, and a little bit more. It is just purely designated for wildlife, so there are no people living in that area. The reason why this area is designated as a concession is because, along with many of us, we work very closely and have a good memorandum of understanding with Save the Rhino Trust. We have a private concession in the area where our guests spend time with the desert rhinos. Again, we will emphasize on that as we carry on, all right? The Hoanib Skeleton Coast, the emphasis is all in the name. It's on the border of the Skeleton Coast National Park. We have access to the area. We're going to get down to the nitty-gritty of the Hoanib Skeleton Coast as we carry on. Again, Emsie is based there. Dr. Flip obviously uses the area as a base on a regular basis. And then last but not least, we found a place where we can put a dot on the map. And then someone said we must put it in the north corner. And then we just put it there, then we drove, and then we thought, we should build a camp because that's what it looks like on the map. Serra Cafema is on the border between Namibia and Angola. It's got great cultural experience, something that we'll emphasize as we move with the slideshow. All right? Then just in terms of a general layout, guys, you see where Etosha is based, right in the northern central part, and then we have a look at where Windhoek is, where you can see the international airport will be based. We will run through the logistics, how people get to and from. In the meanwhile, we'll skip on to the next slide, and we'll get our spirit lifted like as if we were on a game drive. So when we say Sossus Vlei, this is the significance that we have. We are privileged enough to have a reserve that's bordering the national park. The views are amazing as you overlook the red sand dunes. As part of our included activities, guests get a chance to explore the national park and drive out to see the dead trees or in the big pans, the big red sand dunes. And we try to have a diversity of our offering. I mean, there's so much happening in Sossus Vlei. So once we have a communication of what your guests are like and what we're able to offer, extra activities, hot air ballooning is amazing. And in this instance, some helicopter experience across the desert over 2 hours makes for a great photography opportunity. And the guests get a surprise stop somewhere. The guy stopped the helicopter, full out of sparkling. It's still cold. The wind is blowing in the desert. If you look around you, natural distancing, there are no human beings around. It's deep breaths of fresh air, and that's the kind of experience that you're likely to offer when you come around to wilderness in Namibia. Let's go on to the next slide. And it's just a very simple point out in terms of when you go to the coast, remember Swakopmund is a German town with great history, great heritage. A lot of guests pass through there. So there's a lot of features that entertain guests in many aspects. They've got activities on the coast. I mean, look at that sunset. Standing on top there, gin and tonic, 3 ice cubes, the sunset. It's where we need to be right now. Even us in Windhoek, we long for that kind of experience. Right, we'll go over to the next slide, guys. And then again, we mentioned the Tomorrowland area and, you know, focal point, you can see I'm just trying to touch on bases and highlights. We will get into the depth of what's going on. At Tomorrowland Camp, there's heritage site in terms of the rock engravings, as well as working with Save the Rhino Trust, which we spoke about, tracking black rhino. And then just, you know, there's this sense of diversity of wildlife. I mean, Dr. Flip emphasized on it after such a long period of time. You know, each animal has grown a significant adaptation to a dry climate. These ones drink funny, these ones eat funny. We take the emphasis to spend time with our guests and elaborate and, you know, really give a perspective of what the bush is about and how the ecosystem exists. And this gives a broader perspective and not just about a great picture. Guests feel so much value when they come to places and know that it's not just about knowledge they pick up, but also contributing value. Amen to that. All right, next one. Very cool. And then look at that for a contrast. We did the whole sand dunes, then it was the rocks, and now there's the coast. Then there's an oasis. There's even an elephant in the background, and you can see there's our old Hoanib Skeleton Land Cruiser. This is such a significant value. Again, the diversity of what your guests are able to see in Namibia is what we try to emphasize in these last few slides. Such a great experience, such diversity, spending 3 nights at a place, getting a chance to see so much. All right, and then last but not least, there's a place far away where the water acts as a border between 2 countries. On the right-hand side, you have Namibia. That's where Serikafema is. And on your left-hand side, that would be Angola. Guys, Serikafema is the absolute most remote place in Namibia for where it stands. But as an experience, it gives a great cultural understanding and in-depth value of why our Himba people exist, how did they come into the area, which families have significant values, and how long they've stayed there is all what we try to embrace. And so we'll carry on going and catch up on some 4Cs as the slideshow comes towards an end. All right, then we'll go to the next one. And this is how we go. Gerhard and I really had like a conversation about how do you describe it? Am I really going to show you a map and where we're all flying around? We can do that, but I'd rather have a bit more feeling and oomph about it, right? So for what it's worth saying, we know that if you travel in Namibia, you can do it by vehicle and you do it by aircraft. When you travel with Wilderness Safaris, Wilderness Air both offer chartered flights to destinations as well as sole use flights for private flights taking guests to and from locations, all right? So primarily we use 2 aircrafts that you see most of the time. The smaller one is called the Cessna C210 and the other one is called the Caravan or Cessna C208. And so we use these ones on a regular basis depending on the amount of guests available at the time to cycle and move through our camps. And we also take the opportunity to charter the plane to some of our associated products, making sure that, you know, as part of our service, when your guests arrive, they meet the wilderness representative, and throughout their whole stay, we'll always have someone accompanying them, even towards the end. They might be in the same car with Moses, who picked him up the day they arrived into the country. And so we really try to have that engaging experience with your guests, starting with aircraft, and then we'll move on to the camps. So I'm going to touch base on where the camp is located, and Gerhard might just give you a little bit more feeling in terms of the activities and the offerings, and really just try to build up what you could expect when you come to a place like this. So Little Kulala, now this is one of our more iconic camps, and even the picture is less likely to change even though we're renovating the camp. There's a lot of things that we liked about this iconic 2-pointy tent that we really try to keep here, but it's our classic camp. guys, it's got a bit more of a high-end experience. You know, it's got air cons in the rooms. They have a little plunge pool. You know, there's a little quality and small touch. I mean, we want to offer guests a sleep-out deck on the front, etc. And then just give a different feel to the desert, eh? Remember, places like these, bordering the national park, making helicopters and hot air balloons available, as we mentioned earlier. You go on to the next slide. As we touch on base on activities, Gerhard will kind of give you an idea of what we're doing and why we're there.
So the sausage play area is more about the smaller things. We don't only focus on elephants and the large animals, but this area gives you an opportunity to also look at tiny animals like beetles and how they survive and what their adaptations is in the desert and hyper-arid areas. And then also it's a great place for photography, as we mentioned earlier, with the red sand dunes. So at sausage play, we normally wake up very early in the morning to catch that golden hour, as we call it, and just to get a good light for our photographs. And then there's various ways that we can move around. As you see on the right-hand image, we've got some ATVs or quad bikes, as we call them. And then we also have a few solar-powered bicycles, which is available for our guests. And then lastly, we also do guided walks, as you can see on the picture on the left-hand side. And what we do on the guided walks is we just focus on tracks that we find to see what kind of animals has passed through in the night. Because in the desert, due to the very hot conditions, a lot of the animals are active at night when it's cooler. So yeah, and then there's various activities that you can do. Clement mentioned earlier on that there's also a company that offers hot air ballooning with a nice champagne breakfast afterwards. That's also on the table. And then lastly, the helicopter flights or scenic flights that you can do to get a nice bird's eye view of the area.
Thank you. All right, if we move on to the next slide, we'll touch base on Kulala Desert Lodge. And so just to give you a comparison between the two, guys, we said that Little Kulala is a classic camp. Little Kulala, we mentioned, had a bit more of a high-end touch, and you know, with air conditioning, etc., etc. Whereas Kulala Desert Lodge is more of our adventure style. It makes easily access in and out of the national park. It's great for guests who want to come and have a short stay of 2 nights and have an experience. We also take the opportunity, you see the rooms in the front all have stairs leading to the roof for stargazing opportunities, sleeping under the stars, etc. And I think if you're all ages friendly kind of camp, meaning that anyone's welcome at any time, and it just gives so much of a better feel. It's definitely, adventure camps are more family style and gives us a very, very good feel of being everyone together. It's actually a pretty cool location. Amongst many of us, Kulala Desert Lodge can be quite a favorite. So we move on to the next slide. You can see what Gerhard was really talking about, touching on the smaller things, absolutely. I mean, it's the more time you spend in the desert, especially as guides, the more you learn how to interpret what you see. And our guests obviously really appreciate that, because as part of our experience in some of the camps, we will be offering a living desert experience where there's an emphasis on looking at the small things for either a morning or an afternoon, and just walking around the sand dunes, tracking down stuff, identifying, understanding the broader perspective of how the ecosystem adds up together. And then eventually, when you see a scrub here, people get all excited, all right? We obviously emphasize on making the most of what we have. As you can see, stargazing is a really, really important part of Sausage Play area. The guides that we have, each one obviously take their time to spend time with the stars, star pointer with their guests, pointing out, you know, the bigger constellations, sharing some great knowledge about some of the stars. It's really, really entertaining. All right, as we move on to the next one, we get onto some of the more favorite parts, guys. The Marland camp. Gerhard, do you want to touch base on this one? We can even go on to the next slide.
So the Marland camp is actually one of our success stories where we have a joint venture with the local community. They are referred to as the Rimvasmakers, and there on the right-hand side image, you can actually see one of our guides talking to some of the old ladies in one of the villages. So what we do there is we conduct regular visits to the village to just give our guests a cultural experience. But then also the highlight of Damaraland is to search for the desert adapted elephants, which is well known in Namibia. Then the geology is also very unique, unique in Damaraland, because this is where the mountains were formed when the continental drift started. So the landscape is dominated by these red tabletop mountains, which we call Etendeka basalt. And we also do find black rhino in this area, and lots of the other antelopes and even ostriches and smaller predators. So yeah, this is quite a diverse area as well, and many activities that you can do there, and guided walks are also really great in this area. And as soon as you go into the riverbeds, which we also refer to as a linear oasis, that's where most of the life is congregated in the desert. These ephemeral river systems sustains a huge amount of animals, and obviously this is where most of the food for them comes from.
All right. So Damaraland Camp, again, there's this big emphasis on conservancy. Doranawas is our adventure camp in the area. Again, also in a conservancy-based area. They also have a joint venture with the Doranawas Conservancy. Also an emphasis on landscape. The Etendeka mountain layers that Gerhard was just speaking about, you can see in the backdrop already. If we skip on to the next slide, when you visit Doranawas, we really take the time for our guests to understand the geology, but also how people lived into the area. So first, we mentioned that there was the Rinfas marker, where we visit the village and meet the local people and find out about their history and how they moved from South Africa to where they are today and why they haven't moved back, etc. But we also take the time to visit a national heritage site called the Twyfelfontein Rock Engravings. So as an operator, we would drive over there, we would have a local guide walk us around with our guests and explain all of these rock engravings that can be anything between 2,000 to 6,000 years old, and describe of how nomadic or hunter-gatherers were able to, find food and describe and teach determined on the rock engravings. And so this is a big emphasis on that as well. The next slideshow is actually something that I pointed out, that I left out for Gerhard, because I know he mentions it so much. So this is it, guys. When you go to the Chobe National Park, the Ruaha National Park, the Serengeti, you always see an abundance of animals. When you come to Namibia, we show you the significance of how a certain animal is able to survive in an extremely desolate and remote environment. This is a pure description of that. There's not a tree in sight. The only thing that made it onto the picture was the one ostrich that lives in the whole Damaraland. Gerhard saw it last week, and as you can see, it's on the left side of your screen. There's a smaller black dot. That is the same ostrich. It's been around for us forever. All right, so as we move on to the next slide, we talk about the Hoanib Skeleton Coast. I'll try to be a bit straightforward here in terms of Emsie is based there. She does a lot of her research there. We have the research center there as well. This camp's exact purpose, and this is really, really important, exact purpose is to have a research center so that guys going from local universities and from abroad can all participate and come along and spend time in the field, and all their studies are then made available to our guests to at least observe, whether it's a small talk show or a small presentation that is available after an afternoon activity or something like that, and just get a broader insight in terms of why the camp exists. It's very similar in terms of the layout and standard of what would be at Little Kulala or Sirakafema, which we will touch on as well. We'll move over again to the next slideshow. This was again the emphasis of what we mentioned as activities and what you get to do. So if you stay for 3 nights at Hoanib Skeleton Coast, you will have a chance or an opportunity included in your stay to visit the Skeleton Coast or do the coastal excursion. So weather depending, but naturally we drive guests to the coast and we have lunch somewhere special, and then we come and fly back to the camp. So it's so diverse because you could wake up in the morning and as you drive through the rocky nothingness, it turns into a dune oasis, and the next thing you know, you're at the beach, and within the morning drive, you'll have at least 3 or 4 changes of landscape before eventually arriving to the rocky beach. And again, if the blessings are in our favor and the lines moved around, if they're in the track of where the car may be, we might deviate to see if there is somewhere present, and that always complements the status. Know that if they exist in the area, we don't see them all the time, at least we know they're around. All right, we'll move on to the next slideshow. Oh, thank goodness, that's not mine. And then we'll add a little bit of value. Gerhard spoke about this. I tried to bring it up as much as possible. If ever we spoke about an authentic wilderness experience, and not wilderness safaris, we said an authentic wilderness experience. An experience where your guests could have come and have a chance to track black rhino on foot. So if we quickly move on to the next slide, you will see that at Desert Rhino Camp, Wilderness Safaris has a memorandum of understanding with a group called Save the Rhino Trust. This allows our guests to join trackers who patrol a certain area on foot. So they drive out with vehicle. When they find the rhino, they will get off on foot, patrol, and record valuable data. We, as Wilderness Safaris, we will accompany the trackers with a separate vehicle, and we will actually join on the actual tracking and walking and collecting of valuable data. So Save the Rhino Trust has got the biggest database of black rhinos anywhere else in the world. What's really significant about this is that over a long period of time, we've realized that the rhinos in that area, in a fence-free environment, have actually started growing in population. And to be honest, it has only been, I think it's been maybe 24 months, if I'm allowed to give it a big number, between 18 and 24 months, we've had no reported poachings within the Palembang concession itself. And it just shows the effort of Save the Rhino Trust. Us as Wilderness Safaris, we take the opportunity for our guests to come along and really join and contribute a massive effort towards what we get to have as an experience as well, hey? Because our tracking black rhino on foot, it gives a good perspective. Gerhard, do you agree?
Yes, just our presence in the area and our guests visiting and participating in these activities is a deterrent for poachers, and it basically keeps unwanted elements out, and thereby anybody who visits the area directly contributes to conservation of the black rhino.
Touche. All right. So move on to the next slide. The Serikafema camp is probably what we find as much pride as one of our flagship camps, right? It's located far away. It's just been rebuilt. It's got a magnificent layout, lots of space. Everything's been really well thought through. And it's located on the river itself, which is absolutely stunning. We can't take it away. Hey, we're driving through the desert for the last 10 days. We've done rhinos. We've seen Swakopmund. There was one flamingo, I remember, and we were walking through the dunes, and my sand was full of shoes. And now, when you come to the desert, there's a river with actual running water. So I think, you know, when your guests come around to Serikafema, you ask, what is there to offer? Why are we there? What's really significant? Boat activities are absolutely amazing. I think we can probably go to the next slide. So here we go. That is exactly what happens on the day that you arrive. The sun will set in the most amazing location. The guide will force you to have the cold, fresh drink as you watch the sunset in one of the most stunning locations ever. Again, there's a big emphasis at Wilderness Safaris. Something that we take a lot of pride in is that we take a great sense of respect towards culture and ethnicity. And to an extent where we actually try to implement the right procedures in terms of having a relationship with local communities. All right? One of the big emphasis is that we work very closely with the Himba tribe. The Himba tribe are nomadic people. They live in the northwest of Namibia, and they have a very different and traditional lifestyle in compared to you and I. That emphasis is really brought out by the guides as you go out on activity to go meet individuals. So the gentleman you see there, he's actually, you know, his name is Tuedara. And when I was a guide, we would take guests to Tuedara's house. Even still today, we are lucky to have a relationship with Tuedara. that we are able to go to his family's house and spend some time with him and give our guests a cultural exchange that is worth every value that it's there for. And so it is also in exchange. There are many stories and instances of where even over Himba people are amazed at what kind of guests and who they are and the diversity of what we're able to offer when they come around. So for us, cultural exchange is a two-way thing, and we find great value in that. We should never ever forget that. And then obviously we are in the desert. There is a remote space, and this is really important. So I'm going to really ask politely that Gerhard take his time and just explain exactly what it is meant when you say experience-based private guided journeys.
So the department that I manage is called explorations. So, and that is in a nutshell what we do, experience-based privately guided journeys. So in our department, the guides that we have, they have worked in all the camps. They know all the areas, so they will conduct safaris and take their guests on 10 to 14 day safaris, which is, let's say, our scheduled departures. And these safaris will cover all the highlights of Namibia, starting in the south at Sossusvlei and going all the way up via Swakopmund to the northern parts through our camps. And this guide will spend the whole safari with you in your own private vehicle. And our vehicles can seat up to 7 guests, and everybody will have a window seat. And we also do camping safaris on a request basis, where we also visit mainly the area where the black rhinos occur and the desert elephants. But we are quite flexible, and we can actually put together a safari with whatever your preferences are. The slides that you can see at the moment, there's one of our adventurous style camps on the right hand side. You can see there's only 6 tents. So we're focusing on nice, intimate, small groups, and with your personal guide that stay with you for the duration of your safari. So we can also do flying safaris where the guide will accompany the guests throughout the whole trip if they choose to fly, because Namibia is quite a big country. Switzerland can fit into Namibia 20 times, just to give you a little bit of perspective on scale. And so distances are quite long, and some days you can travel up to about 6 hours in a vehicle. So some people prefer then to rather fly between our camps, which is another option. But explorations is all about the guides or the guided experience, and basically you will have your personal guide for the duration of your safari.
All right, so with that said, I mean, for many of us who find ourselves in the industry, we always want to try and give our guests the best experience, but also not as monotone. So what Gerhard and I usually end up having a long discussion about and add value about is saying, as we offer our product, let's make sense of what we really like to say. When you come to Namibia, we can obviously put things together and have a guided drive to Sossusvlei, with our family, especially when you're traveling with family, because to have an explorations guide with you driving throughout Namibia is such an attribute, because they add so much more value in terms of knowledge base and logistics and settling into new places and planning ahead. It just is such a great attribute to have. So when we do these private guided journeys with our exploration guides, you try to combine that the guide will spend a certain time with your guests, and then towards the end, if they're going to remote camps, in some instances, guests might actually have the guide accompany them further, or just fly to a place like Serokafema or Hoanib Skeleton Coast, and then on their return, they might even meet back with a guide as they make their way through to the rest of their itinerary. So, you really want to try and mix and match in terms of your experiences, and that just gives a uniqueness to your itinerary instead of, guests always just staying in one place or staying at one kind of lodge all the time. Mixing and matching it up a bit also give a, what you would call, we usually just say solo experience, but exclusive experience, all right? So what we really like about the explorations part is that when we use the explorations camps, you actually have sole or private use of the camp. It's also a very simple style, the way the camp is designed, with just your own private little tent. You're the only ones there. It's just you around the fire. Gerhard is cooking some incredible veggies. I mean, I know you guys saw the previous slideshow, right? There was this beautiful square pantry with all little veggies in there. We cook over the fire and we give like a really natural bush experience. And this is what we're sitting with, is that today there's a demand for guys to at least taste the rustic. We don't want our guests to spend 24 days in a tent. It's not necessary. But to be in the wilderness and have that remoteness, that is what you get when you go out onto the explorations thing. You know, I've just been on Instagram with a couple of friends and mentioning, guys, we're doing this little transfer, this little webinar, and everybody says the same thing, is that, you know, deep down inside, we need to get back to the desert. That's what they say. We need to get back to the desert. And the reason for that is because there's no signal, there's no Wi-Fi for at least 1 hour. The only thing that you will have is yourself and your memories. And when you come back home, you will sit back and you'll be like, you will have goosebumps and you'll be really excited because you'd hope to come back. So that's our little presentation.